very violent situation, people give up on nuances. They feel they just want to survive from one day to the next, from one catastrophe to the next. For me, it's not enough. I mean, I really try to be, with capital B, in every situation here in Israel. The way for me to do it is to write about it.
Sredinom 80-ih godina prošlog veka, mladi novinar David Grosman odlazi na palestinsku teritoriju, u pojas Gaze i na zapadnu obalu, kako bi za izraelske novine napisao seriju članaka o životu Arapa u izbegličkim kampovima, školama, selima. Iz tih tekstova nastaje Žuti vetar, knjiga dokumentarne proze koja je Grossmana izbacila u književnu orbitu, ali izazvala i veliku polemiku u izraelskom društvu. Njegov prvi roman, Osmeh jagnjeta, objavljen je 1983. A drugi, Vidi pod ljubav, smatra se remek delom ne samo izraelske, već i svetske književnosti. Slede naslovi Knjiga intimne gramatike, Budi moj nož, Njeno telo zna. Roman Do kraja zemlje sadrži sve akupunkturalne tačke Grossmanove proze. Priču o neurozi izraelskog društva i traumama istorije, slike strasti i bola, ljubavi i rata, mira i nasilja, potragu za prostorima unutrašnje slobode, polifoniju glasova i stilova. David Grosman autor je i publicističkih knjiga Smrt kao način života, Lavlji med, Spavati na žici, kao i brojnih naslova za decu. Dobio je gotovo sva međunarodna književna priznanja, a godinama je u izboru za Nobelovu nagradu. Rođen je 1954. u Jerusalimu, gde je završio studije filozofije i pozorišne umetnosti. Pripada prvoj generaciji Izraelaca koja je odrastala u svojoj zemlji.
First of all, it was a childhood, very happy and active.
Happy?
Yes, this is amazing to think. I mean, I was born in 54, which is 9 years only after the Shoah. Now, my parents were not direct survivors. They came to Israel. My father came in 36 from Galicia in Poland. And my mother was born in Jerusalem in 33. So the heavy shadow of the Shoah was not cast on me. But of course, you could not have grown up in Israel 9 years after the Shoah and be totally neutral to this idea. Even when people did not talk about it, the silence was very condensed. And yet, being a child, like being a child everywhere, we were happy children to the extent that a child can be happy, yes, but we were happy. We had a lot of games, and Jerusalem was very small, and there were many valleys, wadis.
It was very provincial, you say.
Very provincial. I think when I was 6 or 7 or 8, it was the first time I realized that not all the people in the world are Jews. And I remember it was one of the days of the memorial that we mention here or celebrate to the memory of the Shoah. And we try to remember on this day the 6 million people, Jewish people, men, women, children who perished, who were murdered in the Shoah. But 6 million is a number, is just an empty number for a child, maybe also for grown-up. It takes one Anna Frank to make it concrete and painful. And then I remember myself standing on the very warm asphalt of the Beta Kerem school among my friends, and the schoolmaster says all kind of, very big words about the sacred people who have been murdered and all that. And suddenly it pierced me that the people who really were murdered are the people that I read in the book that my father gave me to read. Are Topeletu Turitu and Menachem Mendel and all these real and half imaginary characters, a little ridiculous, a little wonderful. And they were my people, and I really was attached to them when I read the books of Shalom Aleichem, because they described me the childhood of my father in such a shtetl. So it was this strange childhood that on the one hand was very happy, on the other hand under the shadow.
I guess you have read a lot of books about Holocaust. How did you decide to write your own book about it? Your masterpiece novel, Sea Under Love?
You know, it was not a question of decided when to write, but there was a moment where it was impossible not to write
about it.
When I started to understand how terrible, how catastrophic was the Shoah, how terrible it is that people in an industrialized way massacred millions and millions of people. I don't want to live in such a world that things like that are possible. Just don't want to be here.
In the book, Sea Under Love, there are 3 different authors. The first one, he's born after the Holocaust. The second one is killed in the Holocaust. And the third one has survived, but he doesn't want to write about it. So, did you want to show 3 different perspectives?
It's a very accurate way to put it. And these are the 3 tendencies, I think, in many of us. First of all, to be silent about it, not to talk. And many of the survivors never spoke about their experience.
זאת בטח לא משם, נכון? שם היית מת מפציעה כזאת, לא?
אהרונצ'וק, זה אמא לא אוהב את זה, אני מדבר איתך על דברים האלה, אה?
נו, ספר רק על הגדולה.
מה אמא אמרה לי זה, אני צריך ללכת איתך לאיזה מלחמה, בתנועה?
לא מלחמה, זה טקס קבלה. קודם תהיה תחרות הופעות, ואחר כך צריך להיכנס למעגל של הגדולים.
ואם לא נכנסים?
שאתה לא מתקבל לתנועה.
זה מלחמה.
לא, זה לא מלחמה.
זה מלחמה. ואתה אל תהיה לי טלגנט. ארטיסט, תנשוך, תיבת בביצים, העיקר שאתה נכנס פנימה. שמה, שתדע, טלגנטים מתו ראשונים. אומנים וטלגנטים. או שמתו או שהשתגעו.
למה הם השתגעו?
אני יודע למה אומנים משתגעים במחנות. שלא האמינו שיכול להיות ככה. בראש הטלגנטי שלהם לא האמינו שיכול להיות ככה כמו שהיה שם.
I remember entering a room and the grown-ups who were speaking immediately hush down and they say, Hayeled, the boy. You don't say that. This was the atmosphere of our childhood, this heavy silence. There was a terrible thing done, but we cannot talk about it now. It's too close, and anyhow, so thought the survivors, even if we tell, nobody here can understand us. Here is another reality. There was another planet. The rules were so different. And many Israelis, many young Israelis at the time did not really want to hear, But what is more interesting is the reluctance of the survivors to tell their story. You know, I guess they felt themselves like, you know, like a stain of darkness in the big blazing light of Israel of the 50s and the 60s. They really felt that their existence is contradictory to the energy and the power of life that prevailed in Israel back then. But you know, the more I grow up, the more I appreciate these people who came really from inferno, from hell. And they found the ability and the power to stick to life again.
גיהינום הגירוש מנהה. לטענת וסרמן, זהו אחד הפשעים שעליהם לא יסלח לגרמנים לעולם. שאלוקים גירשנו מגן העדן, ואתם טרדתם האדם אף מן הגיהינום. נייגל, תואיל להסביר. וסרמן, אורח מופלא לו לעשו לומר צמד המילים הללו. בבת ראש פניו מתקדרים וגביני עיניו מקפצים זה אלי זה בחינת שני עתודים המדלגים לנגוח מצח אלי מצח, או בחינת חייל המקיש במגפיו הייל. נו מה, הרי האילוזיה נטלתם מאיתנו. האילוזיה בדבר הגיהינום. אף לכך נחוצה אילוזיה, בשמץ של ידיעה והסתר, שרק כך אפשר לה התקווה להתקיים. זו התקווה הלבלובית, שאולי אין הדברים רעים כדי כך. ותמיד היינו מציירים בנפשנו הגיהינום, יודע אתה, לבה רותחת וזפת מפעפעת בתוך הדוודים, ובאתם אתם במחילה מכבודך,
והראיתם עד מה דלו ציורינו.
In the last part of the book, there is a kind of postmodern literary game. The story is told in an encyclopedic form. So do you think that existential entries like choice, responsibility, betray, justice, love, liberty, freedom have to be redefined after what happened in the 20th century?
Yes, I think so many things have to be redefined. We know, after the Shoah, we know something about man's ability for evil, but also for grace, in an intensity that we have not known before, I think. At least in time of modern history. Every human being that was born after the Shoah should ask himself or herself at least two questions. How would I have reacted had I been there? As a Jew or as a Nazi, a German? What was I able to put in front of total obliteration of my uniqueness as a human being, of my privacy, of my secrets, of my talent, of my love, of everything? How would I maintain the human sparkle? I'm not talking about the divine sparkle. The human sparkle within. How would I be able to remain myself within a reality that was all meant to erase myself? And the other question is, would I have, or have I been able to protect myself from being swept with these, spell, black spell that was put on the people who collaborated with evil? Will I be really aware where I start to collaborate with this evil and I cheat myself and I turn a blind eye to that and I find very good excuses and I start to fabricate a whole language that will allow this evil to happen and to blossom, to flourish? And it's so easy for such processes to take place. Very easy. You move from just ignoring some injustice or some evil and become a very efficient collaborator and servant even of this evil. And this is why I wrote this book for, actually. I felt that I cannot continue my life here in Israel as a father, as a man, as a writer, as a Jew, as an Israeli, unless I understand my unlived life over there in the time of the Shoah. I felt that the radiation of the Shoah to our life today in Israel, but not only in Israel, is so strong yet and so demanding, and I wanted to respond to this radiation.
You write a lot about the historical time, but you write also about what we call the modern history, or politics, if you want.
Everyday life.
Yes. So in fact, you write about the impact of the politics and of the history on our everyday life. And when you write about the life in Israel, we could see something very unsafe, something very traumatic. There is an everyday fear of war.
Yeah, this is our life. I mean, we live in constant fear for war, for the next catastrophe, for bad news. Even today, in the day that we are shooting this interview in Jerusalem, there are troops of Israel training in the Golan Heights because there might be some attack on Syria because of the chemical weapon there. There might be troubles with Lebanon. Iran is threatening to throw missiles at Israel, and Israel is threatening to bomb Iran. And this is our daily bread. Now, if you look at people, you do not feel that they are pressured or stressed. It's a very strange situation, because when you first come to Israel, I think you are amazed by the vitality, by the warmth of the people, by the emotional voltage of people. And it's all very open and very creative and very noisy and very sentimental, everything. But I think it takes an Israeli to identify, to recognize this subcurrent of deep existential fear. Many Israelis cannot be sure that Israel will exist for long. You know, if you look only at the numbers, at the figures, we are something like 6 million Jews here. We are surrounded by 300 million Muslims, who most of them do not want us here. They don't want us to be here. It's not a secret. They express it in a very open way in their papers, in the talks of their leaders. They don't want Israel to exist. They never internalized the right of Israel to exist here. They fail to understand our deep affinity to this place. So just look at the numbers and you understand that our existence is very fragile, very, very fragile.
אני מתגייסת יומיים לפני יום העצמאות.
מה אמרת?
שאני מתגייסת.
איך את מתגייסת? אנחנו רשמנו אותך לעתודה.
עובדה.
רשמנו אותך לעתודה ואת תלכי לעתודה.
אני לא הולכת לעתודה, אני נכשלתי בבגרות בלשון.
איך נכשלת בבגרות בלשון? דווקא לדבר את יודעת.
קורה.
את עוד לא בת 18, אף אחד לא יגייס אותך.
הסכימו להקדים לי בגלל המצב. אפשר רק שאתה זה של המלך?
The Israeli are programmed from birth to be warriors, you say.
We almost have no choice. You know, if you live all your life in war, if this is the intimate grammar of your life, you know, terms of fear, of trap, of violence, of being on the alert all the time, of being stronger and stronger until power itself becomes the target, the goal. Power should not be the goal. It should be only a vehicle to allow better life. But so many of us do not anymore believe that there is an option of better life for us, of life without peace. Many of us believe that there is a kind of a divine decree that orders us to kill and to be killed, to live by the sword and to die by the sword. And by the way, the Palestinians, who were also programmed by a century of violence and war and occupation and terror, most of them also do not believe that there is such an option of normal life, of life without fear, of life without the shadow of occupation or of terror. We really do not believe that such reality exists. I tell you even more, the distortion is so deep that when Israelis go abroad to peaceful places, to West Europe, for example, they look at this reality and they enjoy it and they love everything that they see, or most of what they see. But deep in their heart, they look at it as a very sophisticated illusion, even a criminal illusion, an illusion of people who do not really know what life is consists of. And for most Israelis, the belief is life consists of war, of aggression, of fear. These are the basic materials, unfortunately, of our life. This is why peace is so needed and essential for us. I also do not think that Israel should demilitarize itself. Israel should be on the alert, and Israel should have a very strong army. But army alone cannot be the component of our security. There must be two components. One is having a strong army, and the other is having peace with our neighbors. Having peace is a total change of the state of mind, another way of being in this life.
I like very much your main character from your novel, To the End of the Land. This is a very intelligent and strong woman. She's name is Zora, and she doesn't want her son to go back to war, but however, she lets him go, and even she brings him to the army unit, and she asks herself how come that she's more loyal to her country than to her son. So it's the kind of question that a lot of Israeli mothers ask.
Yeah, mothers and fathers.
Mothers and fathers.
Yeah, and we keep doing it. We keep bringing our children
to the gathering point of the army, and they are going to the war from there, as our parents did to us. And we do it also because sometimes there is a threat to the security of Israel. We must not forget that. It's not only paranoia, we have enemies. But at the same time, I feel that we have been programmed to collaborate almost without asking question.
You mean the parents, fathers and mothers?
Yeah. Why we keep doing that? Why we are not fighting much more against leaders who lead us time and again to wars? You know, you can say that a people at war naturally will choose a warrior to lead him. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the warriors are leading us constantly to wars. How come, you know, I think of the questions of that Ora, the main character, asks herself, yes? Basically, it is the question of how can we raise a normal child in an abnormal situation? How shall we be able to raise our child to become a human being, you know, full of respect to other people, full of curiosity, open, disarmed to the world? But maybe by doing so, we do not prepare him to life here. Maybe we jeopardize him, put him at danger by making him too soft even for this tough reality here.
How did you imagine female character and tell the story about war from the soldier's mother perspective? Did you want to show that war is a boy's game, a man's game, not a women's?
The great challenge for a writer is to become another human being. Usually we are so protected from the interiority of other human beings, and when you write about someone else who is totally different from you, suddenly you can become this character. I was Ora for 5 years and I enjoyed it. It was so hard for me to move.
How did you feel the skin of a woman?
Well, it was really a pleasure. You know, it takes time, and then I just decided I will surrender to her. I will surrender to her. She's very different from me in many aspects, and in many aspects she's like me, and she's a little like my wife, and like some other women that I know, that I try to create them together as one human being. And when I write a character, it can be Ora, it can be any other character, I really prioritize him to my life. I become this character. I mean, I act normally. You would not suspect that at this very second I think of how I'm going to steal your smile or your nose to my character, yes? But for 5 years and a half, I was able to see everything, I hope, from the point of view of a woman, everything, the way she looks at her children, and the primal way in which she feels her children. Now, you know, I think I'm a very motherly father. I was and am very involved in the life of my children. But I know that my wife is more primal. I see the way she reacts with them, and it's more primal. But as you said, you know, it's a book about family and war. This is how I will describe it. About this attempt to make this normal bubble of love and tenderness and intimacy within the crazy, terrible reality around us. And I thought that men will collaborate more with the machinery of war, of army, of government, of state. And in some women that I know, I always feel this slight skepticism towards those boys' games, as you defined it. It's boys' games. They were invented by boys and in a way by men, let's say. And in a way they reward men more even when they kill them. It's strange, but it is true. It rewards men more even when it kills them, and then glorifies them as heroes, as myths. And I always think of this, a little scene from the book of Genesis, Bereshit, when God comes to Abraham to ask him to give Isaac to sacrifice him, the son of Abraham. He tells him, give me your son, your only one, the one that you love, give me Isaac
and go and slaughter him, sacrifice him. Now God is very intelligent. He didn't come to Sarah, the mother of Isaac. He came to Avram. I think God has suspected that if he comes with this terrible, unbearable offer to Sarah, she would have thrown him from all the stairs of the tent. He came to Avram, and Avram, totally in obedience, took his son, took the servant, the donkeys, and the sticks, and he went to slaughter his son without asking questions.
מה עשיתי? לקחתי את עופר למלחמה. בעצמי הבאתי אותו למלחמה. ואם יקרה לו, ואם זאת הפעם האחרונה שנגעתי בו, איך בסוף כשנשקתי אותו, נגעתי בלחי שלו, במקום הרך, איפה שאין זיפים. אני לקחתי אותו לשם. לא עצרתי אותו, לא ניסיתי אפילו. הזמנתי מונית ונסענו. 2.5 שעות היינו בדרך ולא ניסיתי. השארתי אותו שם. השארתי אותו להם. במו ידיי.
I wanted to write about someone who will ask questions. Someone who is very much Israeli to the extent that she will bring her son to the war, but then when she goes back home, she starts to think, to doubt, how is it possible that I'm more loyal to them, to the army, to the state, to the war, rather to my own son and to my motherhood. And then she started her voyage, her journey. And in her journey, she runs away from home.
Yeah, she runs away from home because she's afraid she will get some bad news. So yes. Is it an act of courage or of weakness?
You know, in the reality in Israel, where everyone automatically sits and waits to the notifiers to come and to dig their notification into them, it's almost heroic, it's crazy act. It's really hard to believe that something like that could have happened. But suddenly it occurs to her when she is waiting for the notifiers, because she has a very strong intuition that something will happen to her son, to Ofer. And then she says, well, it takes two for bad news, one to deliver and one to receive. And what if I'm not here to receive? You know, it's crazy thought. What? I mean, I'll go away and they will not find me. And maybe it will take them a day or two or an hour.
It's not going to happen if I'm not here.
Yeah, I'm not here. And maybe things will be reversed in the world. It's crazy thought, but it's a crazy hour when you sit and you wait. And she runs away, but she does not run away alone, because on her way she kidnaps a man called Avram, who is the love of her youth and maybe the love of her life, even though she's not married to him. And she starts doing the only thing she believes can protect her son. She tells the life story of her son to this man. And she does it because she cannot go into the war and kidnap her son. And the son will not agree. The son wants to go to the war. He was educated and trained for 3 years for this war. He wants to be with his comrades. So she has the only possible way to protect him, and this is by retelling his life story, by telling all the smallest moments, you know, that we remember as parents regarding our child. The first moment he stood up, and when she breastfed him, or when she helped him in mathematics lessons and all that. All those hundreds of small moments from which you accumulate one human being in this life. I think she does it because she feels that when she retells the story, in a way she infuses life and strength into her son. Yeah.
While you were writing this novel, you had your own private tragedy, and you have lost your son in the conflict with Lebanon and Israel. So you kept writing that book. You finished that book.
Yes, I remember, you know, we have 7 days of lamenting in Judaism. And then I think on the first day, Amos Oz and A.B. Yoshua came to my home. And they knew what the book was about, because we speak with each other about what we are writing. And I told them, I don't think I will be able to save this book. And Amos, the clever Amos, said, the book will save you. And the day after the Shiva, I went back to writing it. It's hard for me now to understand it even, but I guess there was a kind of an instinctive choice to go to the only place in my life that was not ruined, that was still a home. You know, the basic
this
feeling.
book is your home, yes.
Yeah, it's a home, and it was a home then. When something like that, such a catastrophe happens to you, the basic feeling is that you are exiled from everything you knew, everything. Nothing can be taken for granted anymore, nothing. But the book was solid in a strange, mysterious way. The book was solid and safe and gave me power. And in the first day, I went to a place where I write. You called it before very generously office. I think my room will be very happy to hear that it was upgraded to be an office. And I sat there for an hour and I wrote. I couldn't do it more. And the next day, another 10 minutes and another. And then gradually the instinct of the writer started to act within me, and the need to infuse life into my characters, and love and passion and humor. Maybe that was the most important and difficult thing. And then suddenly I felt that I'm able to choose life again against the gravity of grief. And you know, this is my story. It's important for me to say it's my personal story, what happened to me. But even if it doesn't happen to you, all of us in Israel, we experience this fear. We live in this fear. And the fear is very concrete. And the way people imagine it is amazingly concrete. Sometimes I feel people around me, they live more in their fears, in the thought of how things can turn, rather than in real reality, which is also not healthy, is also part of the distortion of our situation, that fears take over, that suddenly it's very hard to believe that life will be good, that people are good.
In this book, you left the end open. So in literature, everything is possible, and that's a nice thing, I think. Isn't it?
I think, you know, this is something I learned even before this book, that, in a way, literature or maybe art is really maybe the only place where life and their loss can exist at the same time together.
רותי מכירה אותי טוב למדי שלא להציע לי להפסיק לכתוב אותו. אך בלאו הכי לא הייתה מציעה לעולם דבר כזה. הייתה רק רומזת, מעלה את האפשרות בנימה דקה ככל האפשר. רות שלי מאמינה שבכל אדם יש כוחות גדולים מאוד, גדולים מכפי שליטתו, ועליו להיזהר במגעו עם האנשים האחרים, שלא להרוס בהם דבר, שלא לגרום להם עוול, בעצה או בניסיון של השפעה שעלולים להיות מוטעים והרסניים. היא כל כך בוגרת, אבל למה כל דבר שהיא עושה נראה כמו עבודה? אנחנו שוכבים במיטה ומדברים על ההבדל שבין כתיבת שיר לכתיבת רומן. שיר זה פלירט, היא אומרת, ומחייכת בחושך. רומן זה כמו נישואים.
In your prose, there is a lot of reflections about the nature of writing. And in See Under Love, one character says the story will take us the way it wants to.
The story, if it's a good story, it is more clever than me at least, I know. My stories are always more clever and more courageous than myself, and if I am attentive enough to what they tell me, to what they suggest me, which sometimes is a difficult place. I mean, many of my books are tough books, and they go to tough places and extreme places, and yet what a wonderful way it is to be in this life, you know, to understand them and to give your private names to all these situations. Okay, many thousands of writers before me wrote about love and death and childhood and adolescence, whatever. But I have the chance to give it my private names, and suddenly when I give it my private name, the situation every situation becomes so relevant for me. And I think, you know, maybe this is the key word. So much of our life is dictated by people who are totally irrelevant for us, or by coincidences that just are arbitrary, and they fall on us and they dictate our life and change our life and ruin our life. And when you write, you have this sweetness of dealing with only relevant things. Only relevant things. Everything I write becomes relevant for me. I swim in very thick water of relevance, and I love it.
And there is another of your characters who says, write with passion, not with reason. So do you think it's a good advice for a writer?
I think it should be a mixture of reason and passion.
So what's the balance between the rational and the irrational in the process of writing?
I think the passion comes naturally. You know, you want to tell a story. There is a good story that wanted to be told. It's a kind of a couplehood almost between the writer and the story, and you change the story and the story changes you, and it brings you to the most extreme parts of your soul. I mean, I think really the most extremist experiences of myself as a human being were when I was writing something that suddenly I felt I'm recreated. You know, I am, the book writes me, that's what I felt. And of course, it's a very erotic thing, writing, you know, even the accuracy of words and how to put it, and where to stop and to wait, and where to be very wild and free. And there is this pleasure really of suddenly becoming disarmed, of allowing other people to take over you. Usually in our life I'm calculated. I mean, I run my life and I'm a reasonable person. But writing gives me this chance to be irrational and to write things and to experience things that in my everyday life I will not do so.
Could you live without writing?
No, I could live without publishing now, but not without writing. This is the way for me to be in this life, to be in my life, to understand things, to decode. And I know there are so many things that I will not be able to understand because life is outrageously short and I will not be able to write them. Yeah, it's joy of life, I think, basically. That's it.